Raya and the Last Dragon is Disney's fascinating cultural representation experiment that failed dismally. As a longtime Disney fan, it's disheartening to see their movies with so much potential never get the love they deserved from the start. Disney poured immense resources into these projects, relying on blockbuster success and creating their next big thing. Yet, despite the initial hype and continued appreciation from audiences like me, they failed to generate the desired returns, leaving Disney to grapple with the aftermath of their ambitious yet unfulfilled cinematic ventures. It's a film plagued with a voice casting controversy, the homogenized portrayal of Southeast Asian cultures, the inadequate exploration of the film's richly designed world, and even blatant racism. Although the cast entered the production of the film with high hopes and good intentions.
It is so exciting to be the first Southeast Asian Disney princess.
The fact that we all get to be part of this movie that is sort of breaking those barriers is a big deal.
This is Disney's failed next big thing, Raya and the Last Dragon. Let's start by saying, if you haven't seen it, you're missing out, even if its faults are, problematic. The regions of Kumandra, much like the film's fans and critics, were once united but are now divided, and Raya's mission is to find the Last Dragon and save her fractured world from an ancient evil. Hell yeah! Now that's a premise that grabs my attention and should have been on every fantasy fanatic's radar. Now, apart from the obvious, the dragons, the movie features an exciting array of fantastical elements: a mysterious mist, people turned to statues, a sprawling ancient temple, magical artifacts, and an enchanted forest filled with strange creatures. Unique for its departure from Disney's regular narrative rules, it offers a strong female protagonist on a journey centered around themes of trust and unity. Released in 2021 by Walt Disney Animation Studios, Raya and the Last Dragon is an animated fantasy gem. This blend of traditional and unique elements captivated many viewers, while others found it somewhat triggering. Disney aims to always grow, adapt, and evolve with the changing times, and I believe this film clearly demonstrates their effort to do just that, with the emphasis on effort. Certain choices they made had viewers asking, where's the line between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation, and how far did Disney tread over this dangerous line? There can be no half measures when taking inspiration from existing cultures, and when putting together the initial cast and crew of Raya and the Last Dragon, mistakes were certainly made. The directors Don Hall, celebrated for Big Hero 6, and Carlos Lopez Estrada, renowned for Blind Spotting, teamed up with writers Adele Lim, famed for Crazy Rich Asians, and Ki Win, known for Peg Plus Cat and Vampirina. This powerhouse combination brought together a wealth of talent and passion, creating the perfect storm to breathe life into Raya and the Last Dragon. So far so good. Nicely done, Disney. For now. The final voice cast was also exceptional, featuring a stellar lineup of Asian actors including Kelly Marie Tran as Raya, Awkwafina as Sisu, Gemma Chan as Namari, Daniel Day Kim as Chief Benja, Benedict Wong as Tong. Sandra Oh, who voiced Virana, mentioned,
I didn't consider Virana villainous.
It's probably more complicated, and I think her character is extremely relevant for, honestly, where we are right now, because the idea to trust the other versus survival of self and your own plan, I think everyone can see is happening everywhere. The cast seemed to slip comfortably into their appointed roles, but if you look closer, you'll notice there's something not quite right with these casting choices, even though mostly well received by critics. Kelly Marie Tran's portrayal of Raya as a complex, strong female lead was particularly well received, with some viewers interpreting Raya's character as potentially queer, which Tran confirmed she played with that in mind. Vanity Fair tweeted, though Disney films are noticeably lacking in queer representation, Kelly Marie Tran wants Raya and the Last Dragon viewers to know that if they see themselves in her princess, it's real and authentic. Now, this was a massive win for the LGBTQ+ community, and therefore Disney as well. The performance of Awkwafina, who I simply adore, as Sisu—
Who said that? Hello? Hello?
received mixed reactions, with some appreciating her unique, bubbly portrayal, while others felt her modern dialogue was out of place.
I just shape change.
Dragons can do that?
Look how close my butt is to my head. It's gonna make digestion so much faster.
Now look, I thought it was perfect, by the way, but you can't please all the people all the time. Like this person, for instance. So I'm watching Raya and the Last Dragon, and Awkwafina is so horribly miscast as the dragon in this. It's like she's in a completely different movie or something. But apart from some to-be-expected differences in taste, everything seems relatively fine, right? Wrong. There was a massive problem. Most of the voice actors are East Asian, and the movie is based on Southeast Asian cultures.
Majority of the cast was actually East Asian, and that's a huge problem for me because Southeast Asians are just constantly overshadowed by East Asians in virtually every dimension.
For a Westerner, this might not seem like a big deal, but if you take into account the huge differences between the two cultures, like language, Mandarin versus Thai, traditions, Chinese New Year versus Songkran, and historical context, the Great Wall versus Angkor Wat, it's not difficult to see why Disney was called out for being careless and even racist, acting as if these distinct cultures were the same thing. This, even after Disney hired more pricey Southeast Asian consultants. Being woke ain't easy, y'all, or cheap for that matter. I couldn't believe the lengths Disney went to make Raya and the Last Dragon culturally sensitive and accurate, but still, the movie seemed to miss something. I wonder sometimes if Disney perhaps missed the forest for the trees when producing Raya and the Last Dragon, spending too much time, money, and effort on the smallest details, and ignoring the problems slowly taking form in the big picture. The production team conducted extensive research trips to multiple Southeast Asian countries like Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia, where they focused on the tiniest details like the fibers of cloth, the pigment of colors, traditional architectural styles, and the specific sounds of regional instruments. They wanted everything to be perfect and authentic, blending elements from the different countries like spices into a fragrant mix which would finally become the fictional Kumandra, Raya's world.
We were once unified, harmoniously as one. Kumandra.
Probably most well thought out was the fighting styles.
Since it was a movie that was set in Southeast Asia, I wanted a film that celebrated the martial arts from that region, specifically Muay Thai, Vietnam, Pencak Silat, and Ardennes.
I found even more specific, fascinating ways that different cultural artifacts and elements are represented in the film. Raya's character was inspired by Tun Fatima from Malaysia and the Trung sisters from Vietnam. Raya's costume is inspired by the Bagan costume from Myanmar. Raya's hat is inspired by the Kubla from the Philippines. The food and sweets in the film are inspired by Mu Sarong, various Thai sweets, and Tom Yum, all from Thailand. Raya's sword is inspired by the Keris, and the Feng Palace is inspired by Rumah Gadang, both from Indonesia, and the character Tuk Tuk was of course inspired by the armadillo, with its name inspired by the iconic transport vehicle from Thailand. The extensive research expeditions pushed the film's budget to an estimated $150 million, money they thought well spent. We also have to remember that this was during COVID times, which significantly raised the budget and added major difficulties for the cast. Gemma Chan, who voiced Namari, shared her experience during the production.
Well, it was definitely challenging. I think it's a really special film because of the way it was made. You know, all of us were all over the world, recording in wherever spaces we could find. I think I was recording in my closet at one point.
But despite these substantial efforts, somehow significant criticisms remained regarding the film's ability to authentically represent Southeast Asian cultures, leaving Disney severely confused. What did they do wrong this time? Some people thought that the massive budget could have been better spent, and what was actually lacking was something much simpler. Raya and the Last Dragon. Getting pretty tired of watching stuff where it's clear that every aspect of the production was lavished with time, money, and attention, except for the script. Could a tighter, more well thought out script have saved the film? Didn't it have enough going for it? In in my opinion, Raya and the Last Dragon was an almost masterpiece. And trust me, I don't use that term lightly. But here's the thing. My criteria for a great movie might not align perfectly with those of the cultures represented in the film. So let's dive into what made this movie shine for me and the fans. First off, let's talk about those visuals. Stunning doesn't even begin to cover it. The animation was breathtaking, capturing every tiny detail from the fibers of cloth to the pigments of colors, making Kumandra feel incredibly vibrant and alive. It's the kind of movie where you want to pause every frame just to take in the artistry. But maybe that's just me. I'm weird like that. Then there's the storytelling. Compelling, emotional, and strong. The dynamic between Raya and Sisu was pure magic.
My girl Raya and I are gonna fix the world.
Blending humor and heart in a way that just worked. Their journey explored deep themes like trust and unity, which resonated with so many viewers, including myself. It's not every day you see a story that can balance action, humor, and heartfelt moments so seamlessly. The story really shines when you don't compare it with other fantasy epics and just ignore the familiar tropes. Although I don't think there's anything familiar about a girl riding a pill bug like a one-wheeled off-road scooter. One of the most refreshing aspects was the departure from the traditional Disney princess narratives. Instead of focusing on romance, Raya and the Last Dragon emphasized community and healing. This shift was not just innovative, but necessary, showing that Disney can evolve and tell stories that matter in today's world. Representation matters, and Disney took a significant step forward with Raya, a Southeast Asian princess. This was a big win for diversity and inclusion, earning well-deserved acclaim. It's about time we see more diverse stories on the big screen, and Raya's character was a beautiful addition to the Disney lineup. Oh, and let's not forget the subtle nods to LGBTQ representation through Raya's character. It might not have been front and center, but it was there, and it was appreciated by many viewers who saw themselves reflected in Raya's story. With all this going for it, one might be tempted to overlook its cultural oversights, and some viewers did extend a bit of lenience. However, the box office wasn't quite so forgiving. Things didn't go as planned for Raya and the Last Dragon, and the reasons were a mix of factors both beyond Disney's control and mistakes of their own making. Benedict Wong, who voiced Tong, highlighted an important takeaway from the film.
There are lessons here to be learned within this beautiful film, and above all else, that we see each other. We see each other first as human beings, and to be humane.
Firstly, the challenging release due to the COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacted cinema attendance worldwide. Many theaters were closed or operating at reduced capacity, which hurt box office numbers across the board, not only that of Raya. Secondly, the decision to release Raya and the Last Dragon on Disney Plus Premier Access simultaneously with its theatrical release led to mixed box office performance. While this strategy provided access to a wider audience, it also meant that potential theatergoers opted to watch the movie at home instead. Financially, the film grossed approximately $130 million worldwide, a figure considered underwhelming for a Disney animated feature, especially if you take into account that the film cost around $150 million to make. Back in 2021, blaming COVID for everything was practically a national pastime. Got a flat tire? Must be COVID. Forgot your friend's birthday? COVID brain fog, obviously. Disney seemed to follow suit with Raya and the Last Dragon's performance, but maybe it's time they look a bit deeper instead of pointing fingers at only the pandemic. And there's a question related to this that's been wriggling around in my brain. Is Disney racist or just ignorant? No, really. Either way, it's a big issue because a company as massive as Disney with decades of experience and resources can't just shrug and say, "Oops, we did our best." They have the means to do better and should be held accountable. Ignoring the nuances of the cultures they represent isn't just a minor oversight. It's a significant misstep that can perpetuate stereotypes and harm the very communities they aim to portray. So what exactly could Disney have done better with Raya and the Last Dragon? Let's break down the top 5 mishaps. First is the voice cast representation and cultural blending. Despite the film's Southeast Asian inspiration, the voice cast primarily included actors of East Asian descent. This combined with the attempt to create a unified Southeast Asian setting in Kumandra ended up blending distinct cultures into a somewhat indistinct mix. Awkwafina, who voiced Sisu, expressed a sentiment that she hoped would resonate with many.
I was in the waiting room watching Kelly, and when I first saw her, I really did take my breath away, because when you think of a Disney princess, we haven't had one that looks like us, but also when you think about what they should be, bravery, poise, all of these things that Kelly is. And so, I'm even getting emotional just talking about it, because if I was a kid and I saw her today, I think it would have changed kind of how I saw myself in the world.
The world did not share this view. The effort to authentically blend Southeast Asian cultures was well-intentioned, but the execution left much to be desired. You can't just blend the traditional weaving of Laos, the martial arts of Thailand, the architectural styles of Cambodia, the water puppetry of Vietnam, and the shadow puppetry of Indonesia and expect it to still feel authentic to any of these nations. I felt more represented in Moana than Raya, if I'm being honest. Raya feels like hodgepodge of Southeast Asian cultures with a plot that is so ATLA without any of the time to develop the cast and themes that don't feel authentic and dragons that look like My Little Ponies. Gotta say, this guy ain't wrong about the dragons, now that I think about it. Thank you for that. Now, I can never unsee it. But that being said, other online posters had more profound views on the dragon design. Second is the oversimplified and potentially harmful themes. The central theme of trust, while noble, was seen as overly simplistic and unconvincing. Given the complex historical and cultural contexts of Southeast Asia, the portrayal of trust as a simplistic solution to complex issues was criticized as irresponsible. Raya and the Last Dragon is mid. Hardly any likable characters and many contradictions, as well as a pretty harmful message about trust. Raya blindly trusted a complete stranger and showed her the most valuable thing in the world of Kumandra and was shocked when she stole it. 4 out of 10. Some critics argued this could send a harmful message about blind trust, especially to younger audiences who might not grasp the nuances. Imagine a child taking this message to heart when faced with a situation where they are pressured to trust a stranger who claims to be a friend, potentially putting them in a dangerous situation. This should definitely have been added as a trigger warning. Third are the marketing mishaps. The release was a complete dumpster fire. Releasing the film simultaneously on Disney Plus Premier Access with an additional fee and in theaters was a double-edged sword. Sure, it made the film accessible to more viewers, but it also cannibalized potential box office earnings. The pandemic didn't help either, putting traditional marketing activities such as in-person events and promotional tours on hold, and relying only on methods like online ads and social media campaigns. The marketing campaign reached a fraction of its intended viewership, especially in Southeast Asia, where it was supposed to resonate the most. Adding insult to injury, many Southeast Asian countries couldn't even access the movie on Disney Plus due to regional restrictions. Awkward! And let's not forget the numbers. Only about 20% of viewers watched it on Disney Plus, which is shockingly low given that this was during the pandemic when everyone was stuck at home and streaming like crazy. Fourth, been there, seen that. The film was frequently compared to other Disney movies and series like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Some users felt that Raya and the Last Dragon borrowed heavily from these sources without reaching the same level of narrative depth. This comparison highlighted perceived deficiencies in Raya's storytelling, making it seem less original and impactful. For instance, the world building in Raya felt rushed and shallow compared to the richly detailed universe of Avatar, leaving many viewers feeling underwhelmed. So, what were all those expensive research expeditions for? Excuses for tropical holidays? Some fans feel that the world of Raya and the Last Dragon was too expansive for a movie with a 107-minute runtime. There were so many aspects left unexplored, countless storylines not fully developed, and a wealth of cultural details that deserved more attention. I agree, this could have been an epic series if executed correctly, allowing for deeper dives into the rich tapestry of Southeast Asian-inspired settings and characters. With more time, there would have been ample opportunity to highlight and celebrate specific cultural treasures from the distinct regions, making each one shine. Fifth, empty wallets. The pandemic's economic impact made many families cautious with their spending, and shelling out an extra $29.99 for a movie on Disney Plus Premier Access wasn't a priority, especially when there were free alternatives like Frozen 2, The Mandalorian, and Soul. Why pay nearly $30 for a film that didn't even bother to market itself enticingly? I certainly didn't have that kind of cash lying around just to take a gamble. I can't help but agree that corporate greed played a big part in the film's financial failure. Honestly, watching greed slowly fail is somewhat amusing, and I'm a Wario fan. Enjoying greed is par for the course, yet here I am. I am complicated. I got no idea if Raya and the Last Dragon is any good. I'm not dropping $30+ so Disney can make movie money all at once. So, while the pandemic most certainly played a part in Raya and the Last Dragon's mixed reception, Disney's own decisions and execution also contributed significantly. It's a reminder that even giants can stumble and that true representation requires more than just good intentions. It demands precise execution and a genuine understanding of the cultures portrayed. In other words, it's not just something you can throw money at and hope for the best. These 5 reasons give a pretty clear picture of why Raya and the Last Dragon tanked at the box office, but there are still a few burning questions that have been fueling my insomnia, and I'm sure some of these are keeping you up as well. Question 1 is, why didn't they hire a more authentic voice cast? Yes, there may not be a plethora of Southeast Asian voice actors, but did they just ignore talents like Iko Uwais, known for his powerful performances in the Raid series, or Joe Taslim, who shone in Mortal Kombat? Did they forget about Veronica No, who captivated audiences in The Old Guard? It seems Disney blatantly disregarded the cultural distinctions within Southeast Asia. Instead, they opted to ride the coattails of current popular figures. Awkwafina, fresh off her success in Crazy Rich Asians and The Farewell, and Gemma Chan, who garnered acclaim for her role in Crazy Rich Asians and the Marvel blockbuster Eternals, were chosen, perhaps more for their box office appeal than for any genuine effort at cultural representation. This oversight not only undermines the film's authenticity, but also suggests a calculated move to leverage star power over cultural accuracy. The second question is, why did they market it as a Southeast Asian film? I believe the main answer here is that Disney was attempting to fill a gap in the market while simultaneously showcasing their supposed cultural inclusivity. This in reality is cultural appropriation rather than appreciation, and the execution of the movie speaks volumes to this fact. Perhaps they were trying to rectify older racist Asian portrayals like the infamous Siamese cats in Lady and the Tramp, but in their eagerness to generalize Southeast Asian cultures, they came across as even more insensitive. By disregarding the rich and diverse distinctions within Southeast Asia, Disney's effort seemed more like a superficial attempt at inclusivity rather than a genuine celebration of the cultures they were portraying. In the end, of course, it was a technical prowess in animation, story, and filmmaking, but Raya didn't feel authentic enough for me to believe that they're trying to represent Asian people, instead of just using an approach so it can be sold towards the Asian market. Fans agree that if the movie wasn't hyped up as a Southeast Asian film, and just released as a fantasy film, the reception could have been much different. A lack of expectation to be authentic just might have saved it. Third question, why was the film inaccessible in many Southeast Asian countries? This was really ridiculous, and I can't believe that this was just an innocent oversight by Disney. Regions that were supposed to be featured in the film were literally on Disney Plus's blocked list. Countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines had to wait months before getting access, which is beyond ironic for a film celebrating their cultures. This is just my opinion, so don't quote me on this, but I think Disney knew they had messed up and strategically did not want to show this to the people portrayed in it for fear of early backlash. They probably anticipated the cultural inaccuracies and decided it was safer to delay the release in these regions rather than face immediate criticism from the very audiences they were claiming to represent. Actually, you know what? Please do quote me on this. People need to know. Question number 4. Despite having a Southeast Asian story trust and involving Southeast Asian American writers and cultural experts, how did Disney still fudge it? Raya and the Last Dragon is a masterclass of how not to market your movie and oversell on diversity points when you can't live up to the hype. They packaged the movie as this different world to the West while cherry-picking from SEA cultures and hiring mostly East Asian VAs. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many experts you hire if the vision of the film remains in the hands of white American executives. When a project is driven by profit rather than genuine cultural pride, authenticity inevitably takes a back seat. The core issue lies in the intent and execution. When the primary goal is commercial success, cultural nuances and authenticity often get lost in translation. Perhaps if there had been someone higher up at Disney of Southeast Asian descent rather than just consulting help, this production would have been treated with the depth and respect it deserved. When using inclusivity as a selling point, companies like Disney need to be extremely careful how they approach, package, and deliver it, because failure is not only failure for them, but for a whole nation or community of nations. Isaac Wang, who voiced Boone, hopes audiences will see beyond just the film. I hope people can recognize there's a bunch of other countries in Asia itself, and I want people to notice that there's other cultures that they can explore, and there's other foods that they can try, and there's other people that they can meet. Some people even believe the failure of Raya and the Last Dragon was done intentionally to prove a point. Disney, this was not the best time to set up two Asian-influenced movies to drastically fail financially. If you approach Raya and the Last Dragon without prior knowledge of the film's cultural context or the expectations set by its marketing, it can be thoroughly enjoyable. The movie offers a visually stunning, action-packed adventure with heartwarming moments and a positive message. However, this enjoyment comes with the caveat that the viewer remains blissfully unaware of the cultural mishandlings and superficial representations that lie beneath the surface. It's clear that this film is a mixed bag of triumphs and shortcomings. On one hand, Disney is undoubtedly moving in the right direction by attempting to highlight and celebrate diverse cultures. On the other hand, the execution of Raya and the Last Dragon leaves much to be desired, and the film's shortcomings have earned Disney labels like culturally insensitive or even racist. One of the most thought-provoking aspects of this discussion is the broader implications for Disney and other major studios. As audiences become more discerning and demand better representation, studios must evolve. It's no longer enough to include diverse characters or settings superficially. There must be a genuine effort to understand, respect, and authentically portray the cultures being represented. Disney's recent attempts at cultural representation, from Moana to Raya and the Last Dragon, indicate a willingness to move in the right direction. However, the execution must improve to avoid perpetuating stereotypes and cultural inaccuracies. Let's hope Raya and the Last Dragon was a well-learned lesson and stepping stone towards true cultural appreciation and authentic representation, and not quicksand that pulls Disney deeper into the murky waters of cultural insensitivity.